Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the MesoGears podcast. This is the pilot episode. Woo! Let's all give a round of applause to ourselves for, 2 years of making guides and only pumping out 3.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So good. Excellent. Great. Amazing.
We're trying. Maybe not our hardest, but we're trying.
Well, to start us off, my name is Amite. I am the creator of MesoGears. I also run my own YouTube channel and a series called Road to Max Damage. Yes, I'm taking the self-promotion and the self-plug-in first.
Sell out.
Yeah.
Twitch Prime.
And the gentleman that was just talking can introduce himself as well.
I am Tenebris. I am not a YouTuber or a streamer, but just a player on the Reboot server.
And a wonderful contributor to the channel, especially in the last guide,
one of the ungrateful, unpaid interns of this channel.
Yes, all the staff members are unpaid, unfortunately.
And work
all on voluntary basis. We're here because we want to help.
No, it was also due to extreme budget cuts.
Actually, I'm a contract worker, and the reason why it takes so long for us to get content out is because Cheston has to scramble the money together,
I gotta make that YouTube money.
Mama's gotta get paid,
Oh my god.
Oh, yes, of course. All right, who else wants to introduce themselves next?
Do you want to go first, Sam?
Sure, why not? I am Madrexis, or Sam. I'm a failed YouTuber. I produce very lazy videos. I am also a very underpaid staff member of the
You guys are just making me
guide.
sound really bad.
And I am recovering from the last time I might cracked his whip to write some guides. There we go.
I can't believe I'm being betrayed by you
Oh
guys
my
at this rate.
gosh.
We're using this chance to throw you under the bus. It's all good.
I'll take it.
I won't do that because I'm a nice person.
All right, well, nice person, introduce yourself.
My name is Carmen. I'm one of the script editors for MesoGears. I've been playing Maple since 2005, and I'm a bishop in Scania. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Bishop Carmen.
Oh, she almost forgot.
I
Yeah.
thought...
Nice save.
No.
A shameless plug.
No.
It's funny because, out of all of us, she was the most professional.
I'm really nitpicky about certain things. When I read the script, I'm like, oh, no, apostrophe goes here. No, comma goes here. No, there should be a period. There should be a start of a new sentence. No.
Well, the thing is, that's appreciated, because that's what makes MesoGears, It's one thing, guys, it's one thing for us to just say who we are. Why don't we make it more interesting? And why don't we say either the last thing you accomplished in the game or a very dumb move you made in MapleStory? I will start because I remember this fondly because it was in my comments before. But when I was priming my gear, I would accidentally guardian my CSS. So what I would do
Oh no.
to prep my items to prime is that I would throw the safety, I would throw the protection, and I would throw the guardian and then not think about it. And then later on, I'd go to prime, but then I'd be like, hey, I still have slots to recover. So then I start throwing CSS on it, except it had the guardian on it, and then I would throw the CSS on it, it would fail, and then the guardian would protect it and whatever. So I still remember that because I made a whole meme.
Oh.
Rip.
That was so long ago, though, but yeah, that was very dumb.
At least
Well,
you did not
It's not
I-
so bad.
I'd be happy to share next. Depends. Do you guys want to hear something very dumb or something very traumatic?
I want to go
Yes.
for trauma. Let's start
Trauma?
with
Alright.
serious shit.
So I was return scrolling my arcane shoulders. And,
Oh, I know this story.
Yeah. And basically I was buying iCog service off some people, friends, I know, other guilds, things like that. And I had just finished getting 2 slots of, I think it was +1 strength. I was playing my arc. So +1 strength and +6 attack on 2 slots. So going for that perfected 18 attack. And basically, go to hand the shoulder to someone when I was buying service off, and I made sure I mentioned to them after you finish scrolling, pass the item back so I can apply another return scroll so I don't accidentally roll over the stats and like I'd be forced to innocent scroll the item again. So they go ahead, they roll the ICOG on the shoulder. It fails. So they then go to roll another ICOG without trading the item back to me, and it passes, and it gets +4 magic attack and like +6 int, and I have to innocence my shoulder. And
no.
I had spent an amount of money that I wouldn't like to admit on that shoulder.
Oh no.
Oh.
All right, I'm
Yeah,
just
I
gonna keep
remembered.
saying numbers in USD, and you're gonna tell me when to stop.
Sure. All right. Yeah. Come on. Go ahead.
100.
Keep going.
Dog.
Ooh.
150.
Keep going.
400.
250.
Actually, a bit lower.
Oh, okay. Let's say 230.
Higher. Sorry, I was saying like
You're running the conversion of Australian to
Sorry,
USD.
no. I was going off Carmen's number. She said
Oh, I said 400. 300 then?
Okay.
bit higher.
350.
There we go.
Oh
Yeah,
my
there we go.
goodness.
Oh.
So that was down the drain
God.
before I had to start again.
Oh.
Oh,
that
that's
was sad.
so rough. Well, all of that aside, though,
I
all
did
of us
finish it in the end.
here. Yeah, you did. I do remember that. And then you promptly quit and then moved back to reboot.
Woohoo! As you do.
Heck yeah, where the failures and gains feel so much worse.
Exactly.
True.
Actually,
I'm
I don't
looking
know.
forward-
Would you rather have wasted that much money or that many hours?
Depends. If WoW was out at the same time, then probably just the money. But because WoW's out at the moment, the time is more valuable.
In an act of defiance, when the droplet price change hit and armor pieces went from 160 down to 108, I decided to test fate and not safeguard my arcanes, and I proceeded to blow up 324 droplets in 10 minutes.
Oh no.
Ouch.
I boomed at
Yeah.
17 to 18, 15 to 16, and then 13 to 14.
Oh no.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Actually, now that Sam moved back to reboot, this is like the ultimate balance between regular servers and reboot. We got 2 Scania players and 2 reboot players
Yes.
now. No representation from any of the other servers, apparently.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so we're sorry. But yeah, everything aside, though, all of us here at the MesoGears podcast team would like to thank you guys for all of your patience and your support for the channel. We're really happy to see the wonderful positive comments and reactions to our guides, which is it makes us feel good that our effort and time has been well spent for it, really, because this project is really just like a project for me that's sort of like off on the side. It's not like a big focus for me, because MesoGears actually started out as an idea way back when I was first funding my character. Actually, I think that was when I still knew Carmen, and we were in a guild together, and this guild would accept like anyone in all the time. And like every new person that came in always kept asking the same questions, like, hey, what gear should I equip, and how should I spell trace my stuff, and what things should I buy in here and there. And then like we got so pissed off that we ended up posting like a whole bunch of crap in the guild BBS or whatever. And then since then we'd just be like, just look at the post, just look at the post, just
It's
look
so
at the
much
post.
easier that way.
Yeah, and then like the idea came into my mind that like, wait, we should just make a YouTube channel that everyone can just be like, just go to this channel, just go to this channel. And that was 5 years ago. so I'm sorry, guys. It took a long time of development. Well, I blame the fact that I spend most of my time related to MapleStory trying to fund my characters, and that takes priority over everything else. So sorry, not sorry, I guess.
I was just saying, if you started making videos 5 years ago for MesoGears, we'd have at least 7 or 8 videos by now.
Yeah, you know.
At least 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So just to talk about the podcast, so you can already tell this is like a lot more casual freestyle type of thing compared to our guides, which is very, very meticulously processed and gone over and like all that. So this is just like our way of just being chill and just letting it, all hang out to dry and whatnot. So it's gonna be the 4 of us: me, Carmen, Sam, Madrexa, and Tenebris, also known as James, will be your hosts for this podcast. And every so often, if not every episode, we'll have a featured guest on the podcast. And for this episode, we're actually going to have ex-community manager, tripped up my words there, KThxBaiNao, who was the CM of MapleStory when I first started funding my character. So this was like, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So he was before Arwu, who was before Ghibli, who was before Curios, which is our current community manager. So yeah, a long line of community managers. That it took me like 3 months, I think, to set up an interview with him.
Yeah, I remember you hit us up with like, oh, do you have any questions for Michael? And then we had our questions submitted, and then we didn't really hadn't had a chance to talk to him since then, because I imagine the holidays got to him.
Yeah, he said something like that. So the funny thing was, like, I follow him on Twitter, and I followed him on Twitch way back then. And one day I saw that he was live, and I was thinking to myself, well, I always wanted to ask him like many things, but with Nexon and their employees signing NDAs and all that stuff, I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this with us? And he was like, yeah, but you just have to give me the questions in advance. So that's when I asked you guys, like, hey, if you wanted to ask a ex-community manager of MapleStory anything, what would it be? And then we made the whole list. I sent it over, and then he ghosted me for a good while. And then no offense, I'm just playing. But yeah, it did take a while because he got really busy around the holiday season, and especially with what's going on around the world, which we cannot say thanks to YouTube's policy. Screw you, YouTube.
Seriously?
Yeah,
something along
Wow.
the lines of that.
Wait, I can't say redacted?
Yeah. You can't even say the word and then, as I say that, I'm going to be editing that in post, just censoring that.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we got the list, he looked at it, and then he's like, yeah, I can finally do it. And when he got back to me, it was like this late December, and I was like, oh, finally, we can do this. And long and behold, we managed to do it, which I guess the cat's out of the bag now. We already did the interview, but we're going to stick that at the end of this segment that we're doing right now. I hope that every podcast episode can be as interesting as that one that we just did. So we'll have to definitely brainstorm some interesting topics and see if people are interested to come on to this show / program and whatever.
You're setting the bar up really high for us.
Setting the bar really high.
Well,
nah.
So next we're gonna get the president of the United States on to get him to play MapleStory, right?
Which one?
Whichever one they allow us.
But yeah, so a little background on MesoGears. It's funny because a lot of people, when they were talking to me about the channel when it first came out, they were like, is this a reference to Reboot? And I was surprised because, it made sense that they asked me that, but funny thing is that this channel name was created as a reference to the MesoGears building in New Leaf City. Which
that's right. There's so many people that just don't know.
Yeah, it's a non-KMS piece of content that we have in GMS, and it's actually the first location where I started making mesos back in 2009 and whatever. And the quest that you would have to do with John Subani and whatever, and then you finish this whole quest line, you get this like 60% glove for a tax girl, and it would sell for like 13 mil or whatever. And I would try to run that like on multiple characters, but getting like a character pre-Big Bang to like level 30 something and then doing the quest, it it
That's
took
like a
so
month.
long. Yeah, no, I gave up on that. But it's also a reference to the fact that when I first started funding my character, it was MesoGears again that coincidentally enough that propelled me into getting a lot of meso and being able to start funding my character very well. So that's the significance behind the name. And no, it's not about farming mesos in Reboot, unfortunately.
Yeah, because
but
you farm mesos in regular servers.
yeah, no, it's true. I started farming mesos in regular server now that they banned all the botters and stuff like that. Although I don't know if that's gonna last. It's they always find a way, which I don't like that sinking feeling.
Yeah, it's been a good and quiet year, but any second now they're gonna rear their ugly head.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. I mean, I
Yes.
come across a random Kana macroer here and there, but nothing to the extent of the 10,000 Kaiser bots or Kana bots that like shroud around a elite boss just whacking it.
Oh, I've seen those videos or those gifs of some guy just like going for an e-boss, and then suddenly he's greeted by like 800 Kanas suddenly entering the map all at the same
Oh my
time.
gosh.
Yeah, what was it? Like the beginning, when I like first started playing Bear, I think like there was a really huge bot presence, and I was like leveling mules in Sleepywood, Copper Drakes, and the moment like I get the warning screen with the E-boss about to spawn, my map would have at least like 50 Kaiser accounts just appear in my map. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
I see it's the Dragon Squad.
Yeah, so just to talk about, I guess, the channel itself, we just released, or we just completed season 0 of our guide series, our main guide
Yay.
series, which is nice. Let's give
Thank God,
ourselves a round
it's
of
over.
applause for that. Yeah,
It only took us 2 years.
The pain is
dude,
over.
I genuinely despise this season, and like I just want to talk about that for a second because like I have this entire blueprint in mind for this channel, where you know how we have like a blue background currently for all of our guides, so that's like our main line series of guides for general things. So like down in the future for things like season 1, we'll get into more specific things like spell traces, star forcing, flaming, cubing, legion, link skills, and so on and so forth. All of that stuff will be like in that signature blue color. But we don't just aim to have general guides about upgrading and different systems of the game. We also want to do spin-offs and just have different sections of MesoGears, like for example bossing guide. So like we'll have like a different color for that, and we'll have like a different color for maybe like learning about formulas and calculations for things. I don't know, like for
That's
example,
a very professional way of saying it. I think you like to refer to as your stupid math series.
Oh yes, of course. Very, very stupid math. But no, it's it comes to a point where I get asked the question, hey, this item is worth X bill in the auction house. Is it worth it for me to buy it? And then I would always, like, the answer would always be like, okay, take that, convert it into Maple Points or NX or USD, and then ask yourself, is it worth
you
that
buy
price
it?
for you with that money? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, go for it. But then they'll be like, so how do I do that? And I'm just like,
Oh
oh.
my gosh.
So yeah, with that sentiment, it's like, I guess the philosophy behind MesoGears is just with our guides, just because of how long it takes us to make a guide and just how high of a standard that I'm trying to push the guides towards, our guides are mainly structured around the philosophy of like, give a man a fish and, you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, and it gets removed from the game.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
joke.
all good things will come to an end, you know?
Dude, the only good thing from the fishing system was the maps. Have you guys been to any of those maps before?
No.
Hey,
It's-
I heard
it's
Fishing
actually
Gear
pretty
has drop rate on
nice.
belts. Where can you get an item? Where can you get a belt that is drop rate?
Nowhere, I tell you. Nowhere.
They-
That
exactly.
whopping 2%, was it? Or 4%? It was something ridiculously low, I know.
Hey man, that's 2% more you're gonna have from your competitors, you know? What if that 2% gets you that Berserk?
Imagine that, hey? No, but yeah. In all seriousness, though, just because of the way MesoGears works, we really want to aim for our guides to be as what's the term for it? How would I describe it? I
Timeless?
guess future-proof.
Yeah, future-proof.
Yeah. So like we'll never do any specific guides. Like I don't ever think we'll do things like metas. I don't think we'll do like top 10s ever. I don't think we'll do like, for example, say an equipment guide, just because like that's gonna change from patch to patch and from bullshit change to bullshit change.
And we know what happened to the last guy that wrote an equipment guide.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think what we strive to do here is that we aim for our guides to give you the tools to think for yourself and to enable you to be able to make your own decisions and do your own research for more specific things that are, for example, more personal to the person or the player themselves. And the thing about it too is that doing YouTube for so long, I have come across my fair share of watching MapleStory guides, and if I gotta be blunt, I can probably count on one hand the number of good guides that I've come across. Let's be honest.
Yikes.
Not many MapleStory guides out there are as concise or as cut to. Like, they're not as trimmed, in my opinion. Especially, you know, when the guides all start out with, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back with another video."
I don't know which ones you're watching, but I think the good ones are when they start opening up Notepad and start typing in there. And obviously with some incorrect spelling and backspacing, and, you know, adds another like 15, 20 seconds
and you
into
gotta
the video.
have
Hey man, it adds an element of
signature.
realism and, you know, relatability for the audience.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
So yeah, here with MesoGears, we're gonna strive for, I guess, a different standard, which scares me because now that I said that, that just means every guide has to be good. But here's the thing
we
about
expect
our
nothing
process.
but perfection from you.
But here's the thing, right? Our process is very, very strenuous when we make a guide. When we make a guide, and here's the thing about it is that we have like a subject that we would want to talk about. Like, for example, picking a character, right? And we would think from the perspective of a brand new player. And we'd be like, okay, well, let's just type out all the ideas and points that we want into a Google Doc or something like that. And then we'll funnel through and just sift through and filter through all the ideas that we need. Oh, and then we'll be like, oh, is this important? Do they need to know this? Oh, I'll put that in there. That's very important for them to know. And stuff like that. And then like we'll have this whole jumbled mess of text and bullet points in a very big Google Doc. I remember like the server guide, we had it up to like 17 or like 21 pages or something, and then I looked at it and I was like, no, this can't happen. We gotta cut this down.
Yeah, I think what we both worked on it for like a couple of days and got it from 17 pages down to like 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's the crazy part too, is like I also think about the duration, right? Because if I'm a brand new player for an MMORPG that I have not played before and I want to learn about it, if I search up a guide and see like the first guide result or whatever is 2 hours long, I'd be like, nope, fuck this shit. I'm out of here. I'm not even gonna play the game. See ya.
What did we try and make the beginner guide? What time duration?
Oh
were
my
we talking
God,
about
it
like
was
7
minutes? I wanted the beginner guide to be 7 minutes. And
yeah.
we even took out like 2 big sections in that guide, and we still ended up going over 20. But I think, you know, that perspective of me has changed, where it's not like the duration. Well, the duration definitely plays an important role, but I think that if every second is worth watching, then length shouldn't matter too much, right? So I feel like with MesoGears guides, if I was a new player, what I would aim MesoGears to be is like, if I was a new player, I sit down, watch this guide for 10 minutes, and then I know everything I need to know, and I'm off to go play. So it's just like one of those very.
It's not so much like the length that matters; it's like the depth, the width. Some might say girth.
And especially if it's like you can jump to a certain point in a video, you know exactly what information's going to be said. Then it's not going to be like 5-10 minutes of I guess sort of like fluffing around before they actually get to the information you want. It's like at I know 11 minutes 50 they start talking about how to traverse through maps or something like that, and you go okay, cool, awesome, and pretty much everything's there. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be videos that you watch start to finish. If you're looking for a specific part of the video, you can just jump to it and you don't need to know anything that's been spoken about in those like previous 10 minutes.
Right.
And if you're like a brand new player, it's something that you can also sit down from beginning to end and get a lot of information from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think despite its age, like one of the big things that Maple doesn't have going for it is like a proper central place for like information.
Exactly.
Like, the game's been out for 15 years, I think, and it's like still no one knows what like anything is. Like
no, exactly. And like they're speaking about centralized stuff, like the most centralized thing that I can think about is like a Yuma Love. And that's like really outdated. And then and
that is outdated.
There's also like tons of other places like Grandis Library, and there's also the MapleStory subreddit. There's Maple Central, Discord, and all that. But all of that is like all over the place, and it's for very specific things, right? Or just very shallow things as well. So that's why MesoGears was created. That we're hoping that we can create a platform for players of all different experiences to have access to really good information and just a good resource in general. And because we don't get any money out of this, unfortunately, we just take our time with it and we work on the project whenever we're free. So I guess this is a good time to say that if you're interested in helping MesoGears out, feel free to join our Discord server and just volunteer for things that we need help around, like if it's for script writing or recording footage or any of that stuff. Speaking of which, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the following people: Sniz, Shao, Dark Steve, Victor, Gabs, Seth, Lita. All of these people have helped us one way or another with the past 3 guides that we made, and we couldn't have finished them sooner if it wasn't for them. So thank you so much, guys.
Yes, thank you very much. Helps a lot, especially like with, I guess, how busy some of us can always be all the time. Like it's good to have other people that we can kind of just sort of go, oh, can you grab like this little bit of information for us, or if you can record this little bit of footage for us, it's really good.
And it's also really good to get different perspectives from.
Exactly, yeah.
Because there was a couple of points in the beginner guide that I didn't think about, and then Seth pointed out, or someone pointed it out that wasn't like one of us, because we were so like wrapped up in the script itself that we couldn't see outside of it.
Yeah.
And that's when having multiple people take their perspective on on things that helps really much. And you know it's funny too, because season 0 was all about being a beginner. It's just brand new player, brand new everything. And part of the research process in those 3 guides that I did personally was that I ended up playing a whole bunch of different MMORPGs without looking at a single guide. And I said, how good can this game teach me how to play their game? And so I played things like I did play Final Fantasy XIV. What am I saying? The other game that I was trying to say is Phantasy Star Online 2. And I ended up having a good amount of questions that I didn't consider when I was writing the guide for the beginner guide. So it's that type of effort that I put into these guides, and I hope that we can continue with that sort of like work ethic and just like dedication to making our guides as good as possible.
Yeah.
The thing about MesoGears, though, is that it's not a one-person job. This is just, like, multiple people just in front of the microphone and, like, behind the scenes and all that. So, like, right now we may be 4 people. We're the primary 4 people that work on the guides. But behind us, we have, like, a good amount of people contributing bits and pieces here and there. And I feel like the more people we can get to support, us and stuff like that, the quicker we can get out guides and stuff like that.
Yeah, even if it's something as simple as, like helping review drafts of like video drafts, checking out scripts, providing even something as little as screenshots. Every little bit helps, because like we only have like so many like main characters, so to speak. So
Yeah, for
I imagine people would
sure.
get sick of seeing the same like 6 or 8 characters in every single video.
Absolutely, and I had to create a brand new account and brand new characters just to record footage for the little filler footage in the beginner guides.
Nah,
No,
especially.
but like,
Oh, sorry.
oh, my bad. You can go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in regards to like your account, there's like some things that, or like some quest lines, or especially like some, I guess, sort of special interactions. I guess like when you start out on reboot for the first time, I think is what you were talking about, where you had to go and record footage for that from that new account, because anyone who has started on reboot, it's a one-time quest that. The only way
the
you
gift
can do,
box, right?
Yeah, the gift box. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was rough needing to get footage for that. And I was thinking about like taking it from YouTube, but it just didn't have like that same feeling.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
And I guess it's really hard to, I guess, sort of select the information that you're trying to get from those, because they're just going through doing their own thing. Where you might want to, I know, hover over the gift box for like 5-10 seconds to actually find out what it gives you, or what requirements you need to open it, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's part of our process as well, is like we first have our script, we make the bullet points, we refine it, we finally type out the script, and we have a final draft. And then we ask people to go over it, and then we correct grammatical errors here and there and just rearrange some sentences here and there. And then once the draft is final, then we go record it and like narrate the whole thing. And then we then start making a recording list, and then we're like, okay, well, for this sentence I want this footage, and then we just go down the script making this giant list. And like the last guide, it was like 3 pages long, 4 pages even, I think, of just pure bullet points of stuff we wanted to record. And then from there, I just collect everything and I edit it all and stuff like that. And the process for that sort of evolved as we went through the guides, actually. And that's why I feel like as we make more and more guides, we'll be more familiar with our work process, and we can definitely make them a bit faster. But like, for example, the first guide we ever made, and I needed a whole bunch of footage, everyone just sent me random stuff that was randomly named. So I spent like so much time sifting and organizing through footage that I didn't feel like I had to. So in the last guide that we made, which was the beginner guide, I was like, okay, well, here's the list of stuff we want. Here's what you should name them. And then we just had like this naming system, so that when I dumped all the footage in, they all like lined up in order, and all I would have to do is just cut and trim. And that saved me a lot of time in the editing process, which was wonderful. So it's not only a learning process for like the viewers that watch our guides, but it's also like a learning process for us on how to work as a team and how to make our lives easier and stuff like that.
Yeah, just making things efficient, so then we can pump out more guides when we get the opportunity.
Yeah, we want to do more than 3 guides every 2 years. We swear.
We do.
No, yeah, it's true.
It's gonna
though.
get better.
We like
How
the
fast
meme,
it's gonna get better,
but
we're not sure.
I'm pretty sure people would appreciate guides more than the meme.
Absolutely. And the thing was, I ended up picking the hardest thing to talk about, which was beginner stuff. With MapleStory, with like how old the game is and how many exceptions there are to the game. Like, for example, like, oh, all warriors use strength. Oh, but hello, Mr. Demon Avenger. Oh, what are you doing over there? And so, like, that's when we go over scripts, that's like the things that we also have to consider. It's like when we say this sentence, is this true 100%? No? Okay, well, now we have to reword it. And it was so hard to word things to a beginner without, like, being specific, but also keeping it very general at the same time to not overwhelm them. And I think like the guide that really just broke the camel's back for me, that just drove me insane, was the server guide.
Oh my
Regular
gosh.
versus reboot.
What, you didn't like uploading the video and then a week later going into Orange Mushroom and going, oh, hey, Zero's on reboot now, by the way.
Dude, that actually made me happy for reboot, but sad for myself because I was like, I considered like that option that time. It's like that's a very important point to point out because like not being able to play Zero on reboot could be a deal breaker if you like Zero, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing about it is like going back to the concept of future proofing is that like we care enough that like the least we can do is pin a comment on that video and say, hey, here's an update. Reboot can now play Zero. At least like we can do that, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, if we said in the video, reboot is indefinitely not going to get Zero and never will, and I don't know, that would be pretty bad, right?
Hey, I mean, the sentiment was getting kind of close, right? We've been approaching like what, almost 4 years, almost 5 years of no Zero and reboot.
Yeah, and then they just had to like, pull
miraculously
the
in the
rug
Neo update.
under. It was weird. It was sort of left field, but I'm still happy for you guys though. You guys finally get to play Zero on reboot.
The amount of people that I know that are like insta jump ship to Zero the second it comes out, or like, you know, like their one regret with playing on reboot is the fact that there is no Zero. It's like it's
Ta-da!
quite a few more people than you would expect.
It's a unique class. It's very cool.
I do like Zero. Zero is very
There's
unique. In
even a
its own
guy,
way.
I think he streams on Twitch. It's a very recognizable name, but his whole gimmick is basically that he's playing Zero, but in reality, he is just playing two Kaisers at the same time. And I could be mistaken. I think, and like they're all like same Legion, same level, like very similar looks. And I'm pretty sure he has a third one, just because.
Just
I
because.
could
Wow.
I could be wrong.
It's a triple tagging system.
But if he's ever watching or listening, he knows who he is.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about the guides that we made. So the first guide we ever made was the character guide, and since it's uploaded, it has over 150,000 views. That's crazy, man.
That is a lot of views.
That
For
video,
MapleStory, yeah, I would say.
yeah, that video single-handedly made MesoGears partner status.
Don't have to upload another video ever again. Easy.
No, my
Yeah, we did
intention
it.
was
We're
to
done.
get partner when season 0 was done, which is right now, and we had the podcast. But I was just floored by how many people ended up watching it and saying it was good. And fun fact, I actually just found this out like 2 days ago. The official MapleStory Discord has a command for our server guide as well.
That I did see. I did see after you posted it in the Discord. Like, dang. That must mean
Oh,
we did
that's
a
pretty
good
nice.
job.
Yeah, it's like command server choice or something, and it just pops our guide out, and I was like, damn, we made it. You know you made it when...
Yeah.
And that's like the exact purpose of MesoGears that I was trying to go for. It's like, hey, what server should I check? Just watch this damn video!
Mission accomplished.
And it's a bit like it can be annoying sometimes where some members from both like reboot as well as like regular servers have, I guess, a bit of like a toxic mentality towards like their own server. Like, oh, reboot. They feel like, or reboot or regular server, like whoever's trying to convince their friend or someone online to play on that server, they feel like they have some sort of superiority over the other server sort of thing. And it's kind of more just the video was more to take out that toxicity of that communication and just lay out the facts and go, all right, this is what
And the
reg
bias.
servers
Don't forget
and
the bias.
Yeah. And it's like, this is what reg servers provide you. This is what the reboot server provide. I guess sort of gives you. Make your choice based on that. Like, don't. I'm not saying like don't listen. Obviously, like most people will probably go where their friends are. Like that's the main thing. But
That makes sense.
obviously,
yeah.
a type of play style will appeal to one person rather than the other.
I mean, even
which
if you remove, you know, like that bias towards it, like take the bias out of it, right? Or like the, oh, I hate this kind of server
Yeah.
sort of thing. There's also just a lot of people play on Reboot and will end up ultimately picking Reboot for the wrong reasons, right? And then like reg servers and vice versa, because like the big thing for selecting a server that I see often in like Twitch chats and forums and what have you is like you go on Reboot because it's the most popular. There's no mention of the fact that it is an Iron Man server. Like there is no trading or anything. There is no market. There is no economy. It's simply just it's the most populated server, and that you should like go where all the people are, you know. But then what happens if, you know, let's say you're 230 levels in, and like the fact that you can't trade just finally just drives you crazy.
Yeah, and by that time it's already too late because you've put in like all this time into the game that you don't want to start over again. And that's why like when a new player goes into this game, that's what I feel like that's the most important decision that you can make in this game is picking the server.
Yeah, 100%.
So guys, should I play Reboot or regular?
Oh my gosh.
Well, you know, obviously regular servers is nothing but pay to win, and you have to spend
Exactly.
$4,000 a week, you know, just to compete. So, you know, you should
and
definitely
the only
pick
way
Reboot.
to actually progress through the game is to own a frenzy totem and sell service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And
Yeah.
how
10
can you do
hours a
Black
day.
Mage without a bot? Just saying.
Terrible, awful.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How are you supposed to train without Firestarter Ring? You know, what if that pesky boss just keeps moving around too much if you don't have Lucidity Rings?
It's
insane.
True.
How you would ever
Yeah.
just think to play without those things?
I know, right?
And then you're too
Imagine-
lazy to go on loot, so you have to get back pets. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was the character guide and the server guide. But funny thing for the beginner guide, I thought, coming around to that, and I'm not gonna lie, like every guide that we made in Season 0 has been a huge headache because of the things mentioned before, and just things like, oh, is this actual fact or is this like our personal bias or opinion or whatever? And we try to stay very clear away from personal biases and opinions, just because it has no place in a guide that in this channel for that matter. Talking about the beginner guide though, that was a really fun one to do. I'm not going to lie. It was the longest guide, but it was probably one of my most favorite guides to write about, because it's just when you're a new player in an MMORPG, you easily can get overwhelmed, like I have when I played, you know, the other MMORPGs that I was talking about. And being able to just sort of like understand the general systems and how things work, like just in a general sense, it just gives you a much more clearer image of what you need to do, what you have to do, and what you want to do, and how you can achieve that sort of stuff. And it gives, I feel like a good guide would give a viewer direction on what to do. So I really hope it did do that purpose. And the thing was with that guide is that it was so hard to write about, given that all of us here on the MesoGears podcast, we've played this game for many years, so it's hard to
go back to basics. Yeah,
exactly. So like this was around the time when a couple small YouTubers picked up the game, and I ended up talking to them, and I was like, hey, how are you liking the game? What do you think? Like, and then they'd tell me things that like I would have never considered. Like, for example, when I watched, there was a YouTuber called Don Holiday, and there was also a YouTuber called Damage Fury. Both of them told me when they were playing the game for the first time, they were like, man, I wish I knew how to navigate around the Maple world much better. They don't teach you that. And I'm just like, okay, we gotta put that in the guide. That's like very important.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a couple of us, even the people that were helping out with that beginning guide, even resorted to getting our girlfriends to sit down and like.
You guys have girlfriends?
You do.
Maybe no. Like, I mean, I even got my girlfriend to sit down. I'm like, all right, play the game. I'm not going to tell you anything, and then you start just telling me things when you're lost. And I don't know, just trying to figure out if that was something that would be worth mentioning in the guide. Because I think like one thing that I definitely noticed when I was watching like her play was a lot of the newer characters have a lot of assumed knowledge on how to play the game, whereas like a lot of like the explorer characters actually go a bit more in depth on how to play the game, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like through the tutorials?
Yeah, like especially like classes like Adele and things like that. Like their tutorial is a story, whereas like for an explorer, it's an actual tutorial sort of thing.
Right. That's true.
I do appreciate that you did bring your girlfriend into this, because I do remember a long time ago when I was watching a YouTube channel called Extra Credit. They're a channel that talks about like game design and much more than that, but a particular section of the channel that talks about game design. And one of the people that work there is a game design consultant, and his method of dealing with game designers and seeing how their game is at teaching players is that he'll pick up the game and he'll tell the developers not to say anything to him, and he's just going to try and figure it out on his own. And if the game can't do that for him, then they have to rework it. And I feel like MapleStory in that regard is not well designed in that way.
Well, I think in terms of, there are some things that will need to be explained, that should be explained, in my opinion. But I think there's also some merit in the idea that like there are some elements that should be discovered. And
no, absolutely.
Yeah, like that the players should take the initiative to discover themselves. Because it's like those like magical little moments are what make like those moments of like the player feels like, oh, I just learned and I discovered something that I shouldn't be. It feels like I shouldn't be doing this, but it's so good and I can do it. It's like leaving room to discover little things like that. I still think holds its merit. But when it comes to overall like systems, there should be like a good degree of like explanation on like figuring things out, and especially in a system with like the enhancement system in this game, where if you aren't careful and if you don't understand something fully, you could lose progress or lose an item forever.
Yeah.
Destructive progression is not good game design. Come at me.
Because there is like and again, it's like with a game as archaic as MapleStory, right? Like having your items get destroyed has been a core feature of the game for like God knows how many years. But it wasn't
ever since the beginning, really.
Yeah, but then it wasn't until the introduction of the Star Force, or like of the latest iteration of the Star Force system, where you could have an item get destroyed, but you have the chance to bring it back.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can bring it back.
Yeah, you can bring it back. It's not like doom and gloom forever, but there are still avenues and items that exist in the game that might just destroy your item permanently, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep. Although I think in Neo, the newest patch that's out in the Korean version, they actually reworked a lot of those items to not destroy your item permanently, which is a good thing, because like things like CSS, we have the common version of it from Elite Monsters and Bosses, the 5% version and the 10% version. They don't blow up your item on a chance, but 1% CSS that drops from a boss has like a 2% chance to destroy it. And then there's also like a 20% CSS that doesn't explode your item, but then there's also like a 20% CSS that does. So it's like, oh my god, there's so many different versions of the same thing. It's just like it's so disorganized, and that's why we do need a resource to be able to understand these things a little bit better, because certainly Nexon's not going to do any favors to help us learn that better.
Well, because it's in their best interest to not let us learn, right?
Exactly. And there lies in why we hate Nexon so much.
Speaking of that, what's one quality of life change you would implement into the game?
That's a good question.
I would
one. Go ahead.
Mine is like a count-wide arcane force, or a very easy catch-up system for alts, other than paying Maple points.
Oh, that would be so nice.
That would be really nice. And it goes same for like account-wide like link skills as well. That'd be really
Or
nice.
just a
Yeah.
higher cap than 12 and unlimited swapping would be nice.
Well, I might disagree because with like the link skill system, it's like, I mean, there's going to be the cookie cutter, like the 12 best link skills, right?
yeah.
That anybody can use.
Sure.
But, and it's like, it's a very shoddy implementation. But like, I think the intent is there where, given you're only allowed 12 slots, but there are so many different available links, like the option to mix and match, right? I can like, go into further detail, but I can go on about this, but like, the idea that you can have like 2 players and one might optimize their link skills for survival, and like staying alive, and another might optimize their link skills for damage. I think that's nice, but I mean, would I like to have maximum slots? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want damage and survivability, but I think I think giving players even if it's the illusion, the illusion of choice that they can, decide if they want to be like more aggressive or more safe is
I think
an interesting mechanic at most.
Yeah, I think that's I like that a lot more, like being able to choose between damage or survivability. I think like
Why not?
being able yeah. Like being able to choose both, like it also, I guess, like people are then like change their play style around how they've built their character as well. If they've built their character very safe, then they can maybe go in for more of those riskier plays and get damage off where they shouldn't be able to get damage off. Whereas like people who maybe spec into damage, like they might die easier or might run the risk of like losing a life where they shouldn't, but maybe in those burst windows they're popping off, they're doing tons of damage, and like they play that maybe like that burstier role or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
yeah,
like
it's never been it's never been something like, not really a quality of life changed I would like to see, but something that I would be interested in, and I've thought about this many times, is like having class-specific secondary lines. Because, at some point in the game, they introduced, like, secondary weapons or sub-weapons. Because, like, some classes were able to equip stuff like shields, right? But, like, two-handed classes couldn't. So they introduced sub-weapons, secondary weapons.
Mm.
And even for classes that normally do wear shields, there are, like, variants for that. So, something that I always thought would be interesting would be like the class-specific secondary lines.
Such as?
I don't know, maybe like a shade, for example, instead of having like a line of percent attack, maybe their
split lasts for 5 seconds longer.
Yeah, their split lasts for 5 seconds longer or something. Or maybe even like, their close call, their innate link skill, gives you like a 20% chance to survive instead of 10. Like, little things like that are like, impactful enough to make reasonable like changes in how someone plays the game, but like, and also it keeps things fresh,
Yeah,
so not everyone's looking for the same
see,
stats.
Yeah, it would be cool to see like those like class specific secondary lines, because you could make a lot of like really interesting unique ones. Like you could have one for arcs, like while in flora mode or something like that, you have a 5% chance to completely refill your gauge and go back into Spectre form or something like that.
Oh, please give me that one. That would be
like a very small percent chance, and it probably has like an internal CD of how many times it can proc a minute, sort of thing. But it gives you that sense of like, oh, I've just gotten a proc, I'm about to do something insane now, sort of thing. Like I can do something that I wasn't able to before. Whereas like yeah, getting an attack line is cool. It's just a passive, like it's just an increase in your damage sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like being able to go into Spectre form a lot more often means you have the potential to like do more burst damage or sort of thing. Even though it's not necessarily like a damage increase, like it is a damage increase, but it's not like a visual, like you're doing more higher numbers. You're in I guess your character's in a state where it can output more damage.
Yeah, it's not like a on paper increase of damage, but more like a practical increase.
Yeah, like that kind of reminds me a lot of like the WoW, like legendary system or things like that you come across like I play a warlock in WoW, and there used to be a set effect for items where if you cast one spell, it has a 5% chance to bounce from that target to a nearby target, replicating the spell or something like that. It's kind of neat little things like that are kind of interesting and kind of cool to see now and then.
Yeah, I think if we had that sort of system, it would also let us develop different styles, I would say, for our own characters. Like, two people playing the same character could have different play styles completely because of this.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome. Unfortunately, I don't think Nexon would ever consider
I don't think so.
a system like that. But it's nice to think about. No, that's the thing. I would love to chat more about this. Maybe we could talk about this at another time, but we are running a little bit low on time. So why don't we move along to a couple more points? At the very end of the beginner guide, we talked about how MapleStory is a journey and an adventure, and the destination is as important as is the journey. And how do you guys feel about progressing through Maple as a general big picture thing? Like, is MapleStory worth it to go from beginning to end, or like, what do you think about that process?
I think with how, and contrary to like what someone might like, how someone might perceive it, I think the way that Nexon handles old content and keeping things relevant in terms of progression is actually a lot better compared to most other games or most other MMOs I've played, in the sense that even though power creep will exist, and even though like the next boss will exist, or the next boss might come out that might drop like the next set of gear or a new weapon or a new like whatever, all the way to bosses like Zakum, even, where that was like end game content like 14 years ago, like there is still a relevant reason to do Zakum. You know, is it as difficult as it was like that many years ago? Oh no, of course not, right? But you know, it still has its own niche. Same thing with like other like you know, formerly raid level bosses like Horntail, Pink Bean,
yeah,
you know, Cygnus, even, like the list goes on. You know, there's always reasons to do old content, and like the gear that you get from that content is still relevant.
Yeah, and naturally, as a game gets updated and evolves, we have a thing called power creep. And the used to be best in slot equips will obviously get overshadowed by the new stuff. Like, I won't be surprised if, like, 2 years down the road, Arcane will be the second best in slot set of equips to whatever new shiny thing is coming out then. But the thing about it is that, like, it still shouldn't matter to, like, pursuing the best equips in MapleStory is really something that you have to put in to either time or money in, or just both in general. And if you're really striving for that, well, you better know what you're coming or going in for. Like, it's gonna be a lot of time. It's going to be a lot of money if you're playing in regular server, just simply from the model of the game that is free to play and the fact that it's an Asian MMORPG. You can't just expect to waltz into the game brand new and be like, I want to defeat that final boss right there, and I can do it within a month or whatever. It's just unrealistic to put yourselves to that expectation. And that's the problem I feel like with some people's perspective about the game is like, oh, what's the point of trying to work towards beating Lotus if I can't do it and there's people beating Black Mage already? It doesn't matter. The people who beat Black Mage got there because they put in the time and effort and money, if applicable, to beat Black Mage. You're on a different circumstance, you know? You can't compare apples to oranges, and in the end, who cares? Like, it's your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Your accomplishments are just as valid as any other person. So, like, it's always sucks to see people get discouraged and eventually quit because of stuff like this, because it shouldn't be a concern in the first place, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, everyone has their own goals when they play.
Yeah, it's something you see especially a lot with especially with how prevalent streamers are. Well, YouTubers as well, but streamers especially. You know, where you can like talk to that person live. Like I see it very often, where like someone will ask a streamer like, "Oh, like how do I get to where you are?" And like, you know, what they're seeing is like someone like destroy like a boss in like seconds, right? What they don't see is like the fact that like that they've been playing the game for years, you know, like the amount of time they've put in, the amount of connections they made, the amount of people they know,
No,
like the friends they know that helped them get there. Like
they're just seeing the result of the hard work. It's like watching a gaming montage and thinking that whoever's playing hits these clips all the freaking time. No,
It's just like the highlight.
Like, yeah, exactly. You're just seeing highlights or results of like this very long road that all of us in this podcast team have gone through in one way or another in various degrees. And like it's the same thing with the streamers, like you were mentioning, James. So it's just like if you can't, it's apples to oranges in that aspect. And funny you mention when you ask streamers, because like one thing I do see a lot when it comes to Twitch chat is when people ask for help, people just overwhelm them like so quickly. It's like, oh, first you gotta make a kana, and then you gotta get this, then you gotta make MesoGear, and then you gotta da 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 da. It's just like, God, I just wanted to learn how to level up at level 140, you know? So it's really, I feel like a lot of Maplers, when they teach brand new players, specifically brand new players, they're going at it wrong, because in order to keep someone interested in the game, you have to basically nurse them and pique their interest and just like nurture them to like be curious, to grow, and to basically try things out on their own time, even if it may be slower than what like the meta would be. Like you know, and the thing about it is also FOMO, just like the fear of missing out of like certain things. But that goes back to the point of saying like everyone's going at their own pace, you know? And if you really, really want to get to that end game where you want to beat the Black Mage, where you want to get like the new content that's being released, well, you're gonna have to put in the time and effort. And that goes into the problems of burnout and stuff like that. So it's just really like, you gotta know what goals you're setting yourselves towards and what that process is gonna be like, which we're trying to also do by explaining, you know, all of the mechanics of the game here and there. But if anything, that one thing I want to maybe make a point about is that MapleStory is really a lot about grit.
how so?
Well, like kind of like biting down and getting through something that you may not want to do to eventually, I guess, I don't know, reap the rewards later on.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just sort of like the suffer now to get reward later. Here's the difference between that and real life, though. MapleStory is a game. So if you're not enjoying the process, and if you're not enjoying the feeling that you need to grit or just bite down and just power through something, then just don't do it, because if you're not having fun, then what's the point, right?
Exactly.
And for some of us, that process, that grit is the fun.
If you don't feel like, let's say in Reboot, if you don't feel like mesofarming, or like, you know, let's say you are doing dailies, even let's even extend it past Reboot. If you don't feel like mesofarming or doing dailies, you know, like if you don't want to do it, just don't do it. You know, like
exactly.
There is no rush. It's gonna be there tomorrow. It's gonna be there the next day.
Yeah, I don't like seeing like posts from friends, especially in like Bear and things like that. Like, quitting, selling all my gear, sort of thing like that. It's like, I kind of missed having you. Like, I kind of liked having you around. Like, don't leave just yet. Like, give it a moment. See how you feel. I mean, I can't really talk. I went and did that. So
I mean,
you're enjoying yourself. Though,
yeah, but I'm still playing the
breaks.
game. Like, I was already pretty established in Reboot, and then I just like I do have to admit, like the majority of my friends that I've made in this game are in Reboot. Like that's where I've probably spent most of my time. But I just like at the time of like switching to Bear, I felt like a bit of a change of pace and just to kind of I guess sort of see how it goes. Now like that doesn't mean I like stop talking to the people that I've like met in Bear and things like that. It's just I mean I'm just not playing on the same server, but I still chill out in Discord and things like that with them now, which is where I guess like a lot of people really do their communication, whereas not people I guess as many people like communicate through the game anymore really, or as much through the game.
Yeah,
more done externally.
Yeah.
Well, we've developed a lot of stuff over the years where we can talk outside of the game. Like back then it was Skype, now it's Discord, maybe TeamSpeak when that you were around for that as well.
Oh my gosh, recall.
Oh,
Mumble.
That's a throwback. Ooh. If I may go back into talking about the guides a little bit, that beginner guide, like I said, we trimmed out a lot of stuff that we wanted to throw in. Like I had this whole segment about Nexon that I wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah, that's right. The positive and negatives. I was wondering where that was.
Oh yeah, we just cut that out because we were like, we don't have the time for this. If we put this in, it's gonna be like way too long. But like the stuff that I wanted to talk about was just like common game crashes and like common ways to fix the game. Like for example, when you launch the game and it doesn't launch and it's actually running in your task manager, so you actually have to close the process and to relaunch the game and stuff like that. It's like I feel like that's good to put in, but at the same time it was also like sort of iffy type of thing where it's like, oh, maybe we could just put it on a tech support post somewhere somewhere else, or maybe they can just hopefully Google it and whatever.
I feel like if we also added that in, it would have turned a few new players away. Like, oh dang, like there's so many bugs already. Like I don't want to play this because it's so buggy, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like there are positive changes looking forward to come in the future. Like I'm actually curious to see how many or how much like the 64-bit client will fix a lot of issues.
Yeah, I'm looking. Oh my
really
god, imagine that. No more memory leaking. I want to imagine no more memory leaking.
Oh, I can't wait to crash.
What your Maple doesn't use was, what did we work out? Like 16 exabytes of memory.
No, but it is true though. Like as much flack that Nexon gets from us, they have improved the game over time with things like introducing the Meso market, adding 25 stars onto stuff, adding flames and replacing nebulites with them. Which, by the way, when that happened, I called it that Reddit was going to explode, saying that we were getting nerfed in terms of damage output because they didn't understand how flames work. And I was like, guys, listen to me. Flames are much better than nebulites. Shut the fuck up and enjoy the fact that we're getting flames. Please. The nebulite system was not fun for free-to-play players at all. We had to buy them. And we'll talk about being free-to-play and all that stuff in a future episode, I'm sure. That will be a whole topic on themselves.
Was Maplehood Watch not a, like...
No, Maplehood Watch was the thing, but the number of nebulites that we got out of it, not enough.
And that was RNG
not to
as
mention,
well.
Yeah, no, the thing about it was that we didn't even get any of the stat nebulites out of it. It was the trash nebulites that we got, and then we had to like fuse it. If we wanted the good ones, we had to fuse it ourselves. It was like that bad. Oh man, this is gonna be a fun podcast, I would imagine. But for now, I guess we kind of are a little bit over time, which is fine. This is our first episode, so it's just for you guys to get to know us a little bit more, and just for us to just sort of chat together. Because this is one of the first few times where us four have actually been able to just be in a call together. So it was nice talking to you guys as well.
Yeah. We actually intended for it to go overtime, just like how we do with our guides. So it's all part of the plan. I think we should keep it running for another 3 hours just to make sure.
You know, and just like our guide, you know, you can catch your next podcast in 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez, you're ambitious.
Maybe there will be a fifth person. Maybe there will only be 3 of us. Who knows?
But at least there won't be 12 people in the call, and everyone will be talking at once, and some people will never talk in there.
Oof.
I'm calling some people out there with that. But yeah, coming up, we have a very special exclusive interview with KThxBaiNao. He is the ex-community manager of MapleStory, like I have mentioned before, where we will be divulging into the just community manager stuff, you know? So from all of us here at MesoGears, we want to say thank you very much for tuning into this episode of the MesoGears podcast. And hopefully soon we'll get to see you guys again, but not before, we finish a bunch more guides. I'm thinking, at least season 1 of our general guides and some bossing guides and some character guides, maybe.
We'll see you in July 2022.
Yeah, something like that. And, so yeah, no, in all honesty though, I appreciate that you guys are excited for new videos and just patiently waiting for it, but just the amount of time it takes for a MesoGears guide to be created and the amount of manpower it takes, it's just not realistic for us to have a timely schedule where we can upload every so often. So I guess I will turn it around and pose a question to the listener right now. If you had the choice, would you rather prefer us to 1, release guides as we finish them, or 2, make a whole bunch of them and complete them, so like for example a whole season of them, and then release all of them at once? I will let you guys decide, and we'll be working on them regardless anyways, so it won't be like affecting our process down the line and whatnot. So with that, why don't we move on to the interview with KThxBaiNao then?
Yay!
So hello everyone, and welcome to the MesoGears podcast, where we have a very special guest today, the man, the myth, the jobless fuck himself, KThxBaiNao.
Alright, let's go.
I'm sorry, I had to.
You're good, man. You're good.
The
God,
most iconic thing ever.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
No, that's like that's hands down my favorite post on the
Currently employed, by the way.
Yeah, so and much better employed too, I would imagine.
It's got its ups and downs.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this, by the way. I know it took us a while to make this happen, but I'm so glad you had some time today to make it over in this online space of whatever for this little interview type of thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm sorry it was such a pain. The holiday season is just no good for me.
Yeah,
scheduling wise, but I'm glad we've got it finally taken care of.
Yeah, well, especially with what's going on around the world, it's probably like really hard on everyone anyway, so it's totally understandable. Thanks again.
Times are uncertain, actually.
Yeah, here in Ontario, we just got new lockdown restrictions for
starting Boxing Day.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Screw you all. Yeah. It's whatever. So, why don't you introduce yourself and just like your history with Nexon and what you used to do and all that stuff, so people could get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Michael DVNCIA. I used to go by KThxBaiNao while I was working as a community manager at Nexon America on the game MapleStory. I think that was from 2016 to 2017. It was a relatively short stint, but I think about average for most community managers at Nexon, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, they don't last long.
It's community management is not the easiest job. I can tell you that. It has a lot of highs, but there are definitely some really low lows.
Mm-hmm. Especially with Maplers, I would imagine.
Yeah, you have to deal with Maplers all day.
It would be a toxic bunch sometimes.
I found that it's not too dissimilar from any of the other communities. There's always that loud vocal minority that you would look at and you would say they're toxic, but I think the majority of the community is pretty well-intentioned and well-mannered and just kind of friendly. I don't know if any of you were around when I started, but it was a pretty warm reception.
Well, from what I understand, and I wasn't playing too seriously during your time as community manager, but from what I remember, like a lot of people had very, very nice things to say about you compared to most other community managers. So
ever since you left, the track record has gone.
It's had its ups and downs.
It's declined. No, it's just downs.
I don't know. Arwu is like a little bit nice, you know.
He tried.
I think every CM going into the job has a different style, and a way they want to approach the job. I having been a content creator prior to accepting the position, I think I was more open to putting myself out there, whereas some of the
Mhm.
others who are used to working behind the scenes, maybe not so much.
So
Mhm.
actually, I have like a good question about that. Actually, so a lot of people say that like a content creator would probably be the most ideal person for a role like community manager. Having done it yourself, would you say that's accurate, or would you say that it's like a misinformed assumption? You know.
I can see the merits of having a content creator, especially because I think more often than not, communities want to see videos and pictures and just a general level of activity from the community managers that you wouldn't see from your typical office employee. But I think that the tact and the business acumen that comes with working in a different position that's more communication or even marketing focused lends itself to being successful in the position. I think, this was, I like to call it one of my first big boy jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And going into it, I really didn't have, I think I had a year total of prior corporate experience working as an assistant in a
Okay.
public utilities company out here in Washington. And so there was a lot going on within the business that I really didn't understand and that I was picking up along the way. And I think had I a different background or a different professional background, I think it would have really helped.
Okay, so that makes sense because like not necessarily anyone like being business minded, right, is something that you have to be for the most part have to be taught, right?
Right.
And like you're going from like you're passionate about the game, you're a content creator, you make all this content, you love the game so much, but that's not necessarily the same as someone, you know, who thinks with like the interests of a company in mind.
Right. And it's all about finding that balance between being an advocate for the community and its players and still keeping in mind that you have stakeholders at the business you have to report to at some point in your day. And the numbers will come out showing, whether or how successful you have or haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can drive a lot of decisions for people.
Would you say that corporate influence like really took a lot of it away from you in terms of like, you know, being someone that's for the game and for the community?
No, I wouldn't say it did. I think it presented a few obstacles that I hadn't originally foreseen going into this. But at the end of the day, I think that the style of community management that I brought in was different enough from previous community managers
Mm-hmm.
that my management, one letter at the time, and the producers were okay with letting me kind of do my own thing, and handed me the ropes for a lot of the platform and what I wanted to do, and I met very little resistance on things. But of course, there were things that I was interested in doing that, from a business standpoint, would have been either too expensive or just not worth the investment in either my time or
The
even
company's time.
like company's time, yeah, or money.
Okay.
By the way, you don't play Maple anymore, right?
It's been a while. I kind of treat it like I treat other MMOs now, especially since I'm no longer working on it, so I don't feel obligated to play it 24/7.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'll show up for major content updates. I'll update it or reinstall it if I've uninstalled it recently, make the new class or job and go through the leveling experience, try out some of the end game content depending on what I have time to get to, and then go back to bouncing around on other games. I wouldn't say I have like video game ADD, but I my Steam library has a lot of things that have been untouched for
I
for a
think
long
that
time.
goes for like a lot of us. Did you see the KMS winter updates that got announced like not too long ago?
I have not. Since I'm not currently actively playing, I'm not keeping an eye out for patch notes or on any of the blogs.
Okay. Yeah, because the game has changed quite a bit, I would say, from when you were last actively playing. Because they
They're
just recently released
crazy.
the next level cap. So I think
Yeah,
you were around
it's
for
260,
2016,
right?
2017, right? So they released since then. They
Or
released
300.
275, right? And then which was about 2 years ago now.
hmm
And now they
Something
just
like that.
announced 300, which is now live in KMS.
That I had seen. I think the update's called Neo or something, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
So I saw the new level cap, and all I could think was, well, if there were ever time for me to not get back into it. But I think I remember seeing a preview of the new jobs or something, and I think they looked pretty cool.
Kane, yeah, the edgy bowman.
Yes.
That plate. People say it looks like Kadena.
They were like, they
Is,
took
uh,
Vayne.
Nova.
They took Vayne from League of Legends, and they were like, all right, this works.
Oh yeah, that's what they were saying.
So you've been playing. Have you played any other like MMOs since then? Like, or could you name a few of the MMOs and games that you've tried since then? Like since you've like had your kerfuffle with Maple.
Kerfuffle. I've definitely started to sink a lot more time into World of Warcraft.
Okay, how long
big-
have you been playing the old WoW for now?
I actually started back in vanilla, so that would have been what, 2004, and I've played it on and off since then,
Ooh.
kind of similarly to my relationship with MapleStory.
Oh, okay.
Every major update, I'll show up, do the raid tier, and unsubscribe and wait for something new to come out. But this year, because we're all stuck at home, some friends and I thought it'd be a good way to stay in touch and continue to do things together. So since I think February, we've just sunk a lot of time into WoW as a group. It's been
Okay, are
pretty
you
great.
like what kind of content do you do in WoW? Are you a raider? Do you PvP? You kind of do like kind of just like a little bit of everything.
I am on the I lean towards the more competitive side of things. So I do raid, but I raid at an obnoxious schedule, much to my partner's chagrin. She's not too happy with it.
Oh, I know
Um,
all about that.
in order for me to raid outside of the normal day, and not have it impact work or things that I do in the evening, I joined an Australian guild. So I
Oh,
raid
okay.
from right now it's
Ooh.
4:30 to 7:30 a.m.
Oh,
Couple
so
times a week.
you get up for 4:30 to raid earlier than that, obviously, because you have to prep.
Oh, nah, dude, I just wake up at like 4:20. Like, can you summon me, please? Summon, please. But it's been great. You know, we're doing a lot of the more challenging content. We're working on our mythic progression right now. I PvP with some friends, and then with the friends that signed up with me again in February, we do a lot more casual content like mount farming and stuff like that. And that's one of the things I really love about MMO is there's something for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. So going from having grown up with WoW, then also growing up with Maple, I imagine too. Like,
Mhm.
do you think that the differences are as jarring as people would say between like a Korean and a Western, like in terms of game design, game balance, community? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say that they're pretty different, especially when you look at games like Black Desert Online and stuff like that. I think the lines are a little more blurred now, but I think the biggest difference would have been in the business models.
Mhm.
Korean MMOs, Asian MMOs especially, are more prone to microtransactions and gachapon like loot box style purchases, whereas in the Western MMOs that's less prominent. Although now you've got Fortnite and other things popping up where they're really big on it, like the pinatas and stuff. But from a game design perspective, like outside of how they monetize it, I think that Asian MMOs in general are bigger on the cosmetic options that are available.
Mhm.
And there's a bigger emphasis on that, and they are more often than not, they require a lot more of a grind in the end game. Whereas I think Western MMOs are a bit more forgiving of people's time, and they don't require as much of a time investment in order to stay current.
Yeah. I was
And that's stuff I appreciate.
It's funny because did you touch Classic at all on its launch for Classic World of Warcraft?
No, you know, I thought about it, but having grown up with it, I was like, I really don't need to go through
Yeah.
this again.
Okay, so I was like so I'm basically the opposite to you. So I grew up playing WoW as well, but I only really touched vanilla. But despite being so young, and having the time, I only really made it to like level 40. So when Classic released and launched, you know, I was like had that nostalgia trip that everybody else had, and I was like, okay, it's time to redo the whole journey, but this time do it right. And everyone would always like praise vanilla WoW as like oh, it's like super grindy compared to retail. Retail's too easy, blah blah blah. Like, I played Classic concurrently with Maple, and I have to say, Korean MMOs, even compared to Classic WoW, which is supposed to be the hardcore grind, Classic WoW did not hold a candle to like any era of MapleStory.
Absolutely, man.
Like, it was like insane. Like, I had like all these I had my guildmates who were like, oh man, I can't like I had guildies who quit because like they couldn't handle the farming and the grind and the whatever. And I was like, I'm just sitting there like, wait, this is a joke. This is nothing. What do you mean, guys?
I think
You've trained all your life.
Yeah, it's
in-
like-
Maple's a beast of its own for sure.
That actually brings an interesting point though, because MapleStory is essentially or natively Korean, but it's marketed towards a Western audience in GMS. Do you think like Nexon would benefit more if they were to say have more resources or invest a little bit more into their time and money to say
Like,
not
westernize
market,
the game, right?
but yeah, like just a little tiny bit, because the culture is so different between Asian MMOs and Western MMOs, like you were saying.
I think the demographic plays a really big part in that. When you look at the current MapleStory players, a lot of them are and I'm gonna make some sweeping assumptions here, are people like us, where we've played the game while we were younger and we just never managed to put it away.
Mm-hmm.
And
sure.
and so you've got this kind of die-hard, committed, almost loyal audience of players that, for a lot of them, it's one of the few, or maybe even the only game that they play because of how much time it can take away from them. And so when you're looking at it from where we spend our money in marketing or revamping some aspects of the game, I think the obstacle then becomes, well, it works for these players, but these players no longer exist. And so if we start changing things up, what happens to our relationship with our veteran players? Are they still going to be into the game? Are they going to be resistant to the change? And will this be kind of the final nail in the coffin for them, where they finally decide to put it away? And if we do make these changes, how many new players are we likely to even get? Because Nexon America is not a household name in the US by any means, at least not anymore.
Mhm.
And when you talk to people about MapleStory, often it's, oh, I played that when I was a kid, So I think it's tough. I think the art style could do really well, especially with the younger audiences in the US. But the gameplay itself, when you compare it to other current generation MMOs, I think it makes it pretty hard to stand up against them, because we're looking at 2D side scrolling versus a lot of these like really cool, flashy looking 3D MMOs.
Graphics.
Yeah, graphics do play a big part in it.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think again, another part of the challenge is when you look at like the earnings reports for Nexon as a whole, and you look at how small of a slice of the pie the Western games are compared to the Asian games. I think it doesn't look very bright as far as we should
Yeah.
spend more money over here.
Mhm.
you know?
I get the sinking feeling like every single time people bring up like large efforts to push like movements for like GMS specific changes or
Mhm.
like sweeping like movements like that. I always think in the back of my head like we are like a speck in the wind to Nexon,
Mhm.
like for their overall breadwinning. Like, we are lucky to get what we get.
Yeah.
I mean, conversely, you can look at what's happening with other companies too, and you can see a similar trend, but outside the US. So Blizzard, as an example, they just pulled their office in the Oceanic region, just
Mhm.
because they weren't making a whole lot of money out there, like Australia, Singapore, that area. Riot, like their presence in Japan is relatively low because League of Legends isn't huge there. Especially when you compare it to the likes of China, right? And so for the investors, when they're looking at these places, it's, well, we don't make money there yet, or we don't make a lot of money, so why would we throw more money at it?
Oh, Sam is asking in the text chat because he's at work. Was it the Oceanic office? Because I also thought it was the French office, unless they did both, which would make sense to me still.
I hadn't read or heard anything about the French office. It could very well be the case. But I know for a fact that they pulled out of not pulled out of the OCE, but they've let go of quite a few employees out there.
Yeah. The hundreds upon hundreds of layoffs that happened around the holiday time last year.
Yeah, it's rough couple of years for everyone for sure. Actually, sorry, I'm seeing Madrexis's messages now in the
The staff
in that
chat,
one
yeah.
text chat. Yeah. Cutting edge soon. TM probably. Cutting edge in BFA. So looking
okay.
forward to it in Shadowlands, and yes on Frostmourne. I don't think they would cut support in Europe. Now that I think about it, because when you look at the race to world first, right, the European teams are up there, and it's I would
Yeah,
say
there's like a lot
competitively
of
Europe
support
normally shows up
in
better.
Europe. Like even in Classic, like all of the big guilds in Classic are still European.
Just Googled it. You're correct.
Yeah, they
What's the
did close a
French
French office, like because like I didn't even hear about the OCE office, so I guess which just speaks to where I get my news. But
Well, I probably heard about it because I play on Frostmourne, which is an OCE server. So
Actually, talking back about different MMOs, have you played Warframe by any chance?
I did. It was a bit tough for me to get into because I think I found the granted I played it a long time ago when it was I think relatively new. The new player experience wasn't the friendliest at the
Oh,
time.
it absolutely
It was kind of like, here's your
atrocious.
tutorial mission. All right, cool. Now here are 20 different crafting systems you need to learn right away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think anyone near like 4 years ago with Warframe would have been able to just learn the game naturally through the game itself. I think everyone in that sort of era has definitely consulted the wiki at least,
Oh yeah.
if not hundreds of times. But I feel like one of the coolest things about Warframe and Digital Extremes, and this is just coming from me who's played Warframe for quite a lot of time. I don't play Warframe as much anymore just because I've been busy with Maple actually, so that's sort of just taken a back burner. But I really look up to their community manager, Rebecca Ford, because I feel like she was one of the central pieces in the company that allowed Digital Extremes to make what Warframe was, with her constant just active presence and just dev streams and just live streams in general, and just the way she communicates to the player base and the community is just so transparent that like the players just I guess trusted her and retroactively DE. And I feel like that's just one of the things that as a player I would highly value if I was just being told exactly how things are with, like, say, the company and the game itself. Like, I think right now they just recently launched their third open world, which is crazy because, like, 4 years ago, Warframe just was basically, like, nothing, almost. I think 4 years ago was when they first did Plains of Eidolon, which was the first open world thing, and that was like a huge update for Warframe, considering like the general gameplay of Warframe is like mission based with like the 20 crafting systems that you were talking about. But yeah, just because they were listening to a lot of player feedback, they updated the beginner guides. They revamped a lot of just fluff, I guess, or just bloatness in their game. And like they just made a lot of stuff streamlined, which is like so nice for a new player experience. And I was just wondering about your input on like if different companies, like for example Nexon, like I know we just talked about the resources and investments that they can make and how it's not worth it for GMS, but would you say that like this is a very important, or just an important aspect for a company to have player trust or just a loyal player base?
It is. I think when you look at a lot of the more successful games that are out now, if they're not still doing it, then originally they started out with a really big focus on community. Um, I'm gonna use Riot Games as my example here. So they used to have the was it the Summoner Showcase or Summoner Spotlight a long time ago. It was hosted by Nikasor, um, Riot Freaked. So David Turley, he used to do a lot. as far as engaging the community actively. And anytime you do that, and this works for anything outside of the video game community or video game industry, you start to humanize your brand, and people start to find you a lot more relatable. I mean, find that when you put a face to a game, you're more likely to pay attention to that game. You start to build a connection with that person or that mascot that's representing your game. And so I think for the games that have historically done well for themselves, they have something like that where they're using a person or an image to help build that trust with their community.
Yeah, Nexon just doesn't have that, in my opinion.
Well,
which is a shame.
It's tough to have, right? With like, especially with their
yeah,
revolving door of
exactly.
CMs, you know. But it's really hard to put a name to a face to a company, especially with
It's
Nexon.
just like the combination of circumstances that just doesn't allow that to happen, which sucks. Because, you know, I played this game a lot. I like Maple.
Well, actually,
Otherwise,
it's
I wouldn't
for
be doing
Nexon
this,
America,
right?
right?
Right,
in
but
Nexon
like
Korea,
I'm saying,
like there are a lot of wonky memes.
True. Did you see the BTS special, by the way, Michael?
I did see that, yeah, and it's funny because I worked in sponsorships recently at T-Mobile, which for anyone that isn't aware is a major wireless company here in the U.S. So I worked on the sponsorships team specifically in their video game partnership. So I helped manage our relationship with Blizzard, and so I got to see a lot of stuff behind the scenes in terms of like what builds these kind of co-branded marketing efforts. And my first thought seeing BTS was, holy crap, how much money did Nexon shell out for this? Because this is not some like, you know, brand new K-pop boy band that's just like coming up on the scene, you know, trying to get the name out there. Like this is a group with a legitimate army.
Yeah, well, that's like that goes to show,
Literal.
right?
Yeah, no, like
About
literal.
a lot of people that play like Maple are doing it because of like they're still attached because of their childhood. And wasn't it the case that like some of the BTS members grew up with the game, which was like probably one of the things that makes that partnership possible?
Yep.
Probably for a lot cheaper than what Nexon didn't want to pay for.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I actually started MapleStory while I was growing up in Korea also. So I started in KMS. And I can tell you that it's really not surprising that any of them grew up playing it. I think any I'm gonna say most Korean kids that grew up in like the 90s to early 2000s probably at some point walked into a PC bang or internet cafe and played MapleStory. And just
Yeah,
got
because if you're
instantly hooked.
if you're a kid, it's either MapleStory or StarCraft, right?
Yep. Because you're walking through the PC bang and you're looking at other people's screens if it's your first time being in there and you see like, okay, 5 people are playing this, 10 people are playing this. What game is that? Okay, well that's what I'm gonna end up playing.
So, as far as like having played different games, getting to know different communities, like you touched upon, like it's basically the same for every community, right? There's probably the majority of people that are quiet, they keep to themselves, and they don't really complain too much, and it's always that loud vocal minority. In your opinion, like having watched other CMs conduct themselves, you know, like especially with, let's say, World of Warcraft CM, you know, would you say that like their job was more or less the same as yours, or do you think the scale and size of the audience really changes that?
I think the scale and the size changes a lot of it. While I was working at Nexon, I was taking over. I don't know if anyone remembers Scott. I can't even remember his handle. But Brett Forbes was the community manager um, of MapleStory right before me, and he was doing he did a lot of videos for them as well. Um, I was actually approached about the job at Nexon because of him, and then he ended up taking up a position as a community manager at Blizzard.
Oh, okay.
And so, having maintained that relationship with him, I got to learn a lot about what he deals with for his games, and I compared it a lot to what I was dealing with, you know. And we're talking a community of, and I'm just gonna pull out like Facebook like numbers. I remember, I think we were at like 1 million likes on Facebook at the time.
Oh.
I think 60,000 followers on Twitter, and you compare it to the millions and millions that Blizzard has on just World of Warcraft alone. our jobs were very, very different.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I definitely had a lot more freedom than he did, because if I made a mistake, it would be seen by, maybe 10% of the community, so like let's just say 5,000 people. Whereas if he made a mistake, even if it's 10%, that's still
That's a
100,000 people.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a different level of expectations and pressure that comes with a larger community, which is why I think you start to see maybe not less activity from the community managers, but different kinds of activity. Maybe more pointed, and not just a random in-game event where I pop up and summon bosses in town. That's probably a lot less likely to happen in another game.
Actually, speaking about your time as CM, can you describe just in general what like an average week would be like, or just even a day? Like, are you allowed to divulge into that information by any chance?
Yeah, it's not too different from, I think, most community manager jobs. Obviously, like I mentioned, some of the responsibilities being a little different, but um, for myself, it would often, the start of my days back then were usually checking on the different mediums that we use to communicate with the community. So checking the forums for any hot posts, looking through the subreddit, Basil Market, all of the different fan sites, and trying to see what the community is talking about. I'd also double check, our for comments or questions on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that. And after that took up maybe the first 30 minutes or hour of the day, depending on what I found. A lot of meetings with the producer, Savage Ace, and talking about current state of the game, what people are either complaining about or what they like, and often what's in the pipeline and what's coming from Korea, or even what we're working on our own. And then outside of those, it was a lot of content planning and strategy for myself, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do on either social media or in the game for the week. Um, and a lot of, making content that sometimes didn't make it out the door, but it was definitely a lot of content creation for myself.
That's cool. Actually, you mentioned Savage Ace, or Dennis was his name, right?
Mhm.
I think so.
What was he like, by the way?
He is a dope dude. I loved working with Savage Ace a lot. He was very smart. He knew the game very well. He played it himself. I can't remember what he made, but he was an active player at the time as well. And he was very intelligent. He was really great at, I think, weighing the pros and cons between making decisions for the company versus for the community. And I think one of my favorite things is often because he was an avid gamer himself, he saw things through the lens of the community as well, and so would often, lean toward making decisions that would benefit them. And so we happened to get along pretty well.
That's great
He
to
was also
hear.
really
Mhm.
open to a lot of my stupid ideas, which was great for me.
You want to share some of them? I'd be down to hear
I
about
think
these.
the first one was and I'm a little sad that I only did 5 or 6 episodes, was the Maple Minutes thing that I had started up,
Oh,
which was
I
meant to be like
love
a community
that.
spotlight.
Yeah. Oh my god, I missed those.
Because we didn't have it, and originally the idea was for them to be scripted, and I was like, that's not how I work. So I'll tell you what, I will write down like 5 things I'm gonna talk about. I'll go on this green screen room with our camera crew, Norv and Troy, who are amazing. I loved working with them, and I'm just gonna record whatever I want for an hour. We'll put it together, and you can review it and tell me yes or no. um, but he was open to that. One of the things that I had helped start, or at least maybe it was just bringing back, were the I think we called them the Maple Memos, which are kind of like a letter from the producer every now and then,
Mhm.
explaining
Yes.
decisions going into like
Mhm.
big changes into the game.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that he was into that idea, because it was a lot of lift from him to have to like stop what he's doing for the day and write out this post and think about, what is worth talking about, and what he can or can't say about these things. So it was really great, working with him, and seeing how receptive he was to me, especially considering I'm fresh in the industry, not even a year's worth of experience.
Do you so you said there's like a lot of things that you can and can't work on, especially between you and between Savage Ace. Would you say is there as much red tape between like what Korea allows you to do versus what they don't allow you to do? Like, because my assumption is that like there's a lot of stuff and good intentions that GMS wants and has, and you obviously talking about Dennis makes sense of that. Like the intentions are good and they want the best for us, but there's a lot of no coming from Korea that would prevent otherwise. Would you say that's accurate as well?
I wouldn't say it's red tape. I think I think it's a matter of managing priorities and communicating the priorities. Because you know, consider that KMS has their own content plan and their release plans for their games in their community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their community is vastly different from the US community. So everyone wants a different thing. And then we go back and we look at the pie chart, right, where all the revenue comes from. And this is, not like an official stance at all. This is me because I wasn't brought into too many of the decisions, mostly because of my schedule at the time. So there were just quite a few meetings that I just couldn't make. But I think, you weigh that with maybe the lift required from developers to make what's essentially, what is two versions of the game, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's very time consuming and it's very expensive just to make and manage one game as a service, let alone two that are basically the same thing with maybe 5 or 10 nuances between the two. And so then it becomes, anytime we would approach Nexon Korea with something, you have to think, okay, but before you even mention it to them, how much is this going to cost us? How much time is this going to cost us? How important is it really? Right, because like we mentioned, it's a very vocal minority in the community
Yep.
that often complains about things. And so you have to think, okay, is this hot issue really as hot as we think it is? Or is it affecting maybe 1% of the players? And I would actually say that, generally speaking, I think Nexon as a whole is a lot more responsive to community feedback than some of the other companies. Especially, like the top dogs in the game industry, Riot and Blizzard. There isn't a whole lot they do now that's a result of community feedback, unless
Yeah.
it's something like massively game breaking.
I think that was one of the primary issues going into the previous expansion for WoW was like that lack of community feedback.
Yeah, and again, part of it is, and it sucks to say, but I think it was Ian Hazakostas. I think he said something along the lines of, "You think you want it, but you don't." I think he was talking about Classic WoW at the time, which is funny to say now, but he hit the nail on the head, because I think there are a lot of times where we as gamers will say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, and then we get it, and it's not really as great as we thought it would be.
Yeah.
It wasn't Ian, but it was someone else, J. Allen Brack, I think.
Yeah, I think it was J. Allen Brack,
but
yeah.
it's so funny you say that, because like Kevin Jordan, who was like one of the lead devs for WoW during vanilla, also agrees with like because like you think you do but you don't is like a very vilified statement these days, and like it's like it's a sign of like corporate greed and evil and whatever, not listening to the community. But he was one of he revealed on a podcast one time that like he very much agreed with that statement.
It's
and
true
that like players in general don't actually know what they want.
I have no idea what it looks like for Blizzard.
Know what they want.
Yeah, no, agreed. I have no idea what it actually looks like for Blizzard, but I imagine if you look at Classic WoW's numbers, they are probably not as huge as one would want them to be. And then you look at the trajectory the game is going, where they recently put out a survey asking players about the Burning Crusade. Well, what happened to Classic WoW? I thought everybody wanted this vanilla experience, but we're like a year in and we're already moving on to different expansions. At what point is Classic WoW no longer Classic WoW? And it's
exactly.
It's just retail, but it's a couple years behind.
They just want the nostalgia trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of like I see it happen on like you see it on Twitch, as well as the even like the MapleStory subreddit. There's a lot of like every now and then there will be a thread calling for bring back pre-Big Bang MapleStory,
Oh please!
And like I tell my
don't.
I ask
God,
them,
is it-
like
is
in
it,
my head, I'm like, have you seen pre Big Bang Maple Story?
Is it my old friend from the forums? I don't want to call him out by name, but
Oh my goodness.
I still know the username off the top of my head. Every time I saw an old MapleStory post, I knew exactly who it was from.
It's like PTSD.
I can't be here right now, guys. I'm triggered. I gotta go.
But yeah, like yeah, there's a lot of like outcry for like a lot of
Mhm.
certain things, and I mean you're right, it just hits nail on the head. Like people don't know what they actually want, you know.
Mhm.
Well, here's the thing about pre-Big Bang Maple is that I don't think they missed the gameplay. I just think they missed the community. They just missed the players
I don't even think
more
it's that.
than anything.
I think
No,
I think it's a lot of us played this in our formative years, and so we were younger, we were more impressionable, and everything was new and exciting to us. And so,
Right.
I forget who I said this to, but I'm really jealous of babies that are growing up because they get to experience things for the first time, you know. And so, if it's your first MMO, of course, it's gonna seem like this amazing kind of transitive experience where no game will ever measure up or have the same amount of impact as this game has had on your life. But for all you know, that game is RuneScape. You look at RuneScape, sure, it's a great game right now, and you could sink a lot of time into it. But when you compare it to what's available now, there's no way it measures up realistically. But you still love it because of your rose tinted glasses, your nostalgia, that nostalgia trip
Exactly,
you
yeah.
want to go on. And so I think it's really just them reminiscing about the times that they had as a child, and making this connection, or this assuming that they're gonna have the exact same experience if they were to go back to it now. But really, what's gonna happen is they're gonna be like me. They're gonna be some 27-year-old that's like, I really miss classic Maple. They're gonna go back to it, expecting other like-minded people to be there, but it's just gonna be a bunch of other salty 27, 30-year-olds that are like, what happened to the community? Nobody's playing the game the same way. Everyone's like, we're not like joining PQ, carting like 29 decks lists in. We're not doing that anymore. Everyone's just kind of trying to solo everything, because we want current Maple power in classic Maple environment, and it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Absolutely not. I also would not want to relive needing to hit a boss for, I don't know, 10 minutes.
Yeah, maybe I'm just jaded. Maybe it would actually be a great experience, but I don't think it would be that amazing.
No, I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, what is it? Like 15 years ago, we were like literally children. Like the
Mhm.
internet was new. Like talking to another, like a whole actual other person, like across the country, across the world, even was like
Mhm.
no one's ever done that. Like you've never done that before.
Yeah.
So
And
like
we thought about games differently too, like back then, I think the most involved you got in your character's strength was, and I'm gonna speak as someone who's been playing like Thief for like their entire life, is, do I go Dexless or not? Like that was the biggest decision I had to make back then. Whereas now you're looking at best in slot lists, you're looking at item enhancements, and you're doing all this math and how you can invest your time. Like if you're playing on a reboot, like what is the most time efficient place for me to farm all these mesos? We weren't thinking like that when we were kids. When we were kids, we were just like, I just want to get to 30, man. Like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
People
Exactly.
are a lot, even in general. Like this isn't just like a MapleStory thing specifically. With like the access of knowledge, people are a lot more, and like inherent like competitive nature. People are a lot more performance minded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we're looking at patch notes now and seeing a 5% decrease somewhere, and like lighting up our torches over it. I wouldn't have done that as a kid.
Yeah, people will just want the shortcut to the best possible like outcome, and there's really nothing you can do about that. You see it all the time when like if someone's like streaming Maple, especially for like reboot players, they are most guilty of this. It's like they'll watch a streamer who's played the game for like literally years, and then like get upset when they can't like achieve like the same, let's say, farming rates as they have. Like this guy who's put in like, it's like, why can't I be like this guy who's put in 5 years of work into the game I just started yesterday? And like it's an exaggeration, but like that's like you see it
But it's
happen
also
quite
true.
a lot.
I hear you.
Yeah, Sam says we're always looking for a meta nowadays. We don't want to waste your time, which is very true. We always want
Yeah.
the best way, the fastest way to get to as strong as possible in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, it's very rare you find someone playing something because they like playing it. They're playing it because somebody on Reddit told them it was the best class to play, or the best, like the most
Yep.
mobile, or does the most damage per lines.
Yeah, that's
And that's
true.
why they're playing it. I mean, you can look at Reddit or forum posts too. Like, what should I play? What's the
Oh,
structure?
it's
Like, why are we picking classes for
everywhere.
you? It's your game. Play what you want to play, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of one of the things that we hope to alleviate as a channel. And looking at some of the comments that I've seen in our very first guide, which was our pick a character guide, it seems that a lot of people like appreciate the stuff we're talking about. Okay. God damn it, you guys.
Oh my gosh.
The
Heck W.
Moonguard is it's the role playing server in WoW.
Mhm.
So like how we are saying, like people are performance minded, all of that goes just right out the window on an RP server.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Of
refreshing,
course.
and like it's like it'd be neat, but also kind of weird and cringy if Maple had something like that. But like there's no real role playing in like an MMORPG anymore. In most RPGs actually.
Yeah, in most.
Which it's a lost art. Whether it's a good or bad thing that it's a lost art is up to up to each individual. But it's definitely something different.
It's funny you say that because I met someone from Moonguard running some dungeons on WoW, and they
Were they in
invited.
character?
No, they weren't in character, but they invited the group to an event that they were putting on later that week. And the reputation that I think Moonguard has is mostly like ERP, erotic roleplay. And
Yep.
so I was a little apprehensive, but I was also like genuinely curious. Like I was operating under the assumption that they just all showed up in Goldshire in a town in WoW and they just talked to each other. Like that was, to me, that was the extent of where roleplay went in this game. But these guys put on like a full-on play with different acts, and they were setting up props using toys and stuff. It was ridiculously impressive. Like they had all their emotes lined out. It was all scripted, and it was actually, considering the tools that they're working with within WoW, it was a pretty good show.
Dang, that kind of just reminds, that sends me back to like machinima days, actually, where everyone would be making their own series here and there with like their games or whatever. But that actually sounds like really impressive compared to the stuff I've seen from.
Yeah, even at like the Maple machinimas, where it's like Maple combat and like all that, like
Oh yeah,
we ate that stuff up as like kids and like but it's like that level of like messing around and that level of like roleplay or whatever, or just fun, is something that's generally lost and like people don't really seek out or experience anymore.
Or maybe we're the sweaty nerds that are too performance oriented, which is why we're missing out on all of this stuff.
Yeah, no,
that could be the case too.
That's actually it. I actually like I am like envious of like more casual players, who are like can just like enjoy certain things a certain way, like, but being an endgame player on Reboot, I'm always thinking of like, what's a more meso efficient time to meso efficient way to like spend on this time, because like aside from like the brainless meso farming that like Reboot is like infamous for, like there are other ways to progress, not as efficient, but can end up being more fun.
Yeah.
Like you can raise up different characters that can do weekly bosses to get meso crystals, and you make like a decent income out of that. Whereas like if I had an alt character that couldn't solo X boss in Y amount of time, then it wasn't worth my time because I could have just got on my Kana and farmed that meso instead. Like it's really sad, I think, to like think about the game that way, but that's how I think.
No, I hear you. I think it's hard to get out of that end game mindset. Because when you're managing, 2, 3, 10 characters, you have to think about, okay, I need to do these 5 dailies on each of them. I need to take care of these weeklies. I need to you start thinking about your time, especially now that we're all older and a lot of us are working now and we have other obligations with our time. It's how do I maximize the time I have available to me to play this game? And still continue to make progress, because most people aren't happy just sitting there doing the same amount of damage week after week after week after week and not seeing any progress.
Yeah, and that's where I see usually like the big disconnect is between like a Western audience playing like a Korean MMO, you know? And that's where like people will fall into, especially not on like Reboot, right? Or but like when it comes to like pay to win stuff, people will fall into those like those rabbit holes or pitfalls, right? Where it's like if it takes me, let's say if it takes me like a few hours to farm out one bill, right? Or farm out the stuff necessary to get one bill, or I could just like swipe the credit card and
Yeah.
gacha an item worth like one bill. Like people are gonna just swipe out the credit card.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Actually, one question that I had was for other people going into your job and like your job specifically as like a MapleStory CM, would there be anything that you would like tell someone to look out for? Something that you could have done differently, or do you think like it's a different experience depending on each different person?
I think it is a different experience for each person, but I think, and this advice I think applies to a lot of other jobs too, is choose your battles. Um, I think one of my biggest challenges throughout the early stages of my career, not just at Nexon but elsewhere, is that I'm a very passionate person, and I'm also not shy, and
Mhm.
that often resulted in me just stepping on toes along the way, um, and trying to be more professional and trying to actually get what you want. It's a lot easier if you're able to let things go just with the first no that you get. Um, Whereas if you're constantly challenging everything and you're fighting against people that are you're all supposed to be a part of the same team. But if you continue to bring things up and you're like, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, and you treat everything with the same level of urgency, people are going to be less likely to listen to you in the long run when it comes to the more important things. So I would
Mhm.
say if there's something that is important to you, by all means go for it. But I encourage anyone to think about how important it is in the big picture.
Yeah, because like
Um,
if you treat everything, yeah, it makes sense. If you treat everything like it's the end of the world,
It's like the boy who cried wolf, right?
yeah, it's the boy who cried wolf. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Uh, actually, in recent news, we got a new CM yet again. uh, his name is Curios. Actually, he came from the MapleStory 2 like side of the company, and he actually no, he was the MapleStory 2 community manager, and uh, I I I actually like him from what I've seen so far. What do you guys think?
He's very active.
yeah, he has a presence on forums, I think.
Yeah, and in the subreddit as well. And the thing is, like, he reminded me a lot about Michael as well. And I'm so glad you asked that question because, like, if we have someone that cares as much as he does, I don't want to lose him. That's basically like the blunt version of it. So I hope that we can have Kyrios for a long while, so that we can have someone that is as active and as caring to help be our voice, I guess.
hmm here's one thing that I think is important to keep in mind too, and forgive me if you guys are already thinking about this, but the the video game industry has evolved a lot um, over the last even the last 2 years, right? But it's definitely it's still a part of the tech industry, and within the tech industry, there is a lot of movement between companies, where often a person is in their position at a certain company for maybe 1 to 2 years. And so I would say, even if this community manager were to move on after a year or two, it isn't because they don't care or they don't care as much as I did or some other CM did. Sometimes it's just because it's the right move for them career-wise. Um,
Hmm.
I think especially when you look at where people think they want to be, That answer might not always be MapleStory for the long term. For some of them, it is.
Oh,
Like CM Sego, he's been there for forever. I know a couple of people that were there when I started at Nexon that are still there, and some of them were there even when the offices were in Koreatown in Los Angeles before they moved. So I think it's not a lack of care or that they care less. I think it's just priorities shift or change, or sometimes it just makes sense. Like maybe they were offered a promotion that at another company where they're maybe unsure of when they would get the chance to be promoted where they're at now. I think that's a big factor in it.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Like
100%.
I can't say there's a any big reason,
Mhm.
as much as I do like the game, to stay in Maple long term. I think.
Yeah, like
You
for
know.
myself when I left, like it was to start up a job at Microsoft. Like for me at the time, did I love the MapleStory community? Absolutely, 100%. I don't think anyone could doubt it. But thinking about my future, like where do you go from Microsoft? Like to me that was
Yeah.
Exactly.
getting that
right?
offer was like my end all be all. I was like, look, mom, I made it, right?
I mean, like if anyone got that opportunity, I think any logical person would just be like, "I'm packing my bag. See ya."
Yeah. Did it suck? Absolutely. I'm pretty sure I cried on stream when I did the farewell the goodbye interview thingy. Like I did an AMA on Reddit. That's what it was, and I'm like 99% sure I cried during that. Because it wasn't an easy thing to say goodbye to. Like the MapleStory community is great. As toxic as it can be, it's still like something that you just get drawn into no matter what, and you feel like you're a part of. So saying goodbye will always suck, but I to anybody, yourselves included, or any players that get hurt each time a community manager leaves, like because you fall in love with them, just they're a normal person too. They gotta move on with their lives at some point and on to better and greener pastures.
Exactly. And I don't mean as in just to clarify about losing Curios, not in terms of him wanting to go elsewhere, but more in the realm of him overstepping and causing just some sort of conflict internally, and then in result it would be like his leave of absence or something. So I just wanted to be clear and to also clarify, it's not from the perspective of selfishness of treating Curios like he belongs to us.
I don't think you should worry about that. Like I know there were some misconceptions about when I left the company. Like everyone was like, oh, he got fired, blah blah blah, and it was like all fun to meme and joke about. But realistically, like I left the company. I left the company
Right.
in
Yeah,
October
of
of
course.
2017 or October 2016. I put in my 2 weeks notice because I knew that I had something lined up back here in Washington, which is one, it was at Microsoft, so it was amazing. But two, my family lives up here too, so it just made more sense for me to be up here.
Yeah.
And so what I had agreed upon is to work temporarily as a contractor on MapleStory while they found my replacement. And so when I say the termination came as a surprise to me, it wasn't that I got fired. It was that they cut the contract, and that was because they had found my replacement.
Yeah, they cut it early, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I was expecting to work on it for a few months, but they had lined up Arwu as my replacement at the time. And this was me being young and dumb and jumping to conclusions. But looking back on it, it makes a lot of sense, right? I said I will stay on until you find someone new. Well, they found someone new, so
Yeah, exactly.
that's what happened.
Did you actually have any time with Arwu? Like, did you
train him at
got
all?
to? Yeah.
I prepared a lot of handoff documents, but I did not train him. One letter, the guy who trained me would have been responsible, or even I believe Sabina was still there. She was the community manager of Mabinogi. She played a big hand in my development as a community manager. But I know for a fact that Arwu had prior CM experience from another company, and so any training that he needed would have just been like, here's the MapleStory community and its ins and outs, and that's it. But
Okay.
I did leave a few documents that were like, hey, here are the sites you should pay attention to. Here are some key members of the community that I think either have your back or will give you a lot of trouble. Things like that.
I think that list. I can imagine that list for current MapleStory. players right now. Actually,
Some of the people on that list actually ended up as VFMs, or what was it? What was the new thing that started up? I forget what
I
it
think
was.
that's what it is. VFMs, volunteer
Yeah.
forum
yeah,
moderators.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Is there anything you guys want to add by any chance?
Oh, okay. This is a more of an aside, but Hoarder Alliance.
Alliance, my dude.
Okay, all right. I can't believe I just wasted an hour of my time
Oh no.
talking to this guy.
OCE is like definitely like 99% Alliance.
OC's all Alliance, Sam? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But also like the horde capital cities are just kind of ugly.
Oh, no, I 100% agree. The only reason that I play Horde on retail and on Classic is because of my friend.
But like, would I have liked to have made a blood elf? Yeah, I used to have a blood elf, but now I have a void elf that looks like one, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's all that
Yeah. I've got like my cheap knockoff blood elf, and I'm good.
I guess with that though, I just want to say thank you very much for your time, Michael. It's been a wonderful and insightful time
Yeah,
with you.
thanks for coming on. This is awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I had a great time too. Sorry again, it was such a pain in the ass getting me here. But
Nah,
No,
don't worry
I'm
about it.
glad you even
Everyone's got their
showed
shit
up at
going on.
all. I'm sure everyone appreciated this interview. But yeah, this has been the MesoGears podcast. We thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this, and we'll see you guys next time. Michael, you care to sign us off?
oh man, what what was it? Okay, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, but I've got to say bye now. And as always, happy mapling.
Bye.
Hey, thanks, bye now.
Oh my god.